When crafting enemies for our video game heroes to take down, artists often draw from different places of inspiration just to make us uncomfortable, be that scary or inhuman enemies or those that just outright disgust. Now, I couldn't necessarily do the lowdown on the most gross enemies in gaming alone without expecting to see my breakfast again, so I've employed the help of WhatCulture's very own bog goblin, who I've enticed with the promise of a meal of fresh fish heads from the local pond once this is all over. I'm of course talking about Mr. Jules Gill.
Well, thanks for that, Si. I really appreciate that. But anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? As these are the 10 most disgusting enemies in video game history. Number 10, the Finger Creeper, Elden Ring. The From Software back catalogue has definitely got a buffet of beautifully dark and deranged creatures. From Dark Souls to Bloodborne, there are dozens of truly ugly beasts to put out of their misery. But Elden Ring, the studio's most recent outtering, did not skimp on the truly twisted designs. Enter the Finger Creeper. Crawling out of the ground or descending from resting places on the walls, Finger Creepers resemble, as their name suggests, a bundle of crooked, warty digits that have been fused together in strange and confusing ways. And it's not just the way they look either, but it's also how they move. Finger Creepers scurry around the world like oversized spiders, pulling their mass of flesh around one digit at a time. It's one thing to trigger arachnophobia with straight up realistic tarantula enemies, but to do it in a totally unexpected and uniquely disgusting way, well, it's a stroke of very vile genius. Of course, like many enemies in Elden Ring, the Finger Creepers come in multiple different sizes, which only get worse as they go when you think about how large those rotten nails and warts are. There's something distinctively alien about these mutated and disembodied limbs with their own sentience and no fear about rushing the player, fingers flailing madly. Absolute yuck.
Number 9, the Master, Fallout. In the original Fallout, the Master takes it upon himself to create a virus to build a race of super mutants. As he does so, he begins to expand his biomass with that of others, losing what makes him human but gaining great insight and charisma from those he absorbs. The thing about the Master is that he makes for an incredible villain, one that is interesting to engage with on many levels, from the things that he says, musing upon his own morals and cold logic, to the way he says them as he speaks with multiple different voices that express emotions more viscerally. On a surface level though, we just wish we didn't have to look at him. The Master resembles humanity only in so much that he has a head. Around that though, he's just a mess of flesh and organs. Skin is stretched over a screen in ways that don't make sense, and sticking out to one side is a singular suspended blinking eyeball that hangs like a camera. In one ending, the player can convince the Master that his plan is flawed, to which he dramatically gives up on his pursuit and what remains of his life. It says a lot about the quality of the writing to feel anything about this blob of a former human who looks like nothing in particular.
Number 8. Pizza Aliens, TMNT, Turtles in Time. The Pizza Aliens were, for a moment, just a monster of the week for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to face on the 1980s TV show. These weird critters, inspired by the Xenomorph and born from interdimensional meatballs, could have been so easily forgotten if not for the fact that they were immortalized in the extremely popular Turtles in Time SHIN game, more specifically, the fondly remembered sewer surfing stage. Whilst the turtles living underground is common knowledge, at least they've been shown to make it more hospitable. In this game, however, you're reminded that the 4 totally tubular heroes live around pipes full of sewage and human waste. So as these lanky monsters that are made out of cheese come flying out of the water, it's hard to shake the fact that they're covered in sewage once you've considered it. Now, cheese can stand to go a little mouldy from time to time, but most people probably wouldn't dare have any that has been dunked in sewer water. In the recent Shredder's Revenge, the Pizza Aliens made a grand return, and thankfully this time they've made it to dry land. However, it doesn't really help as they lurk underground waiting for our heroes to approach. God only knows how rotten and disgusting these living forms of cheese, pepperoni and green peppers have become whilst lurking underneath that sun-scorched sand.
Number 7. Mara, Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. Within the Buddhist religion, Mara is a demon that represents death, rebirth, and most importantly, desire. A long-serving enemy with the same name has been part of Persona since the 3rd game, and as an overarching franchise, goes right back to the original Shin Megami Tensei. Coming across Mara in either of its 2 forms is always pretty surprising for new fans. Fighting imps and jack-o'-lanterns is one thing, but suddenly coming across a green penis with a mouth is pretty startling. In Persona 5, Mara appears in both its unfinished half-summoned form and its literally riding a chariot display at full glory. There's actually some fun to be had here, and clearly the developers aren't afraid of cracking a few jokes about the monster. In Persona, its classification is a tower persona, and many of its physical attacks do piercing damage. We see what you've done there, Atlas. Still, getting close and personal with this green trouser demon is one of those video game moments that you probably don't want to picture in your mind's eye. Furthermore, Mara's first appearance in P5, inside the perverted mind of a gym teacher, is made all the more disgusting by the fact that it will spend some of its own turns just staring at the only female member of the party. Go take a cold shower, Mara.
Number 6. Botchling, The Witcher 3. As a Witcher, Big G's business is in slaying monsters, and business is rather good. In the third game in the series, the Family Matters quest introduced perhaps the most disgusting monster in the Witcher series. Botchlings, based on Polish folklore, are created from stillborn infants that are improperly buried or taken care of. If abandoned, the child will grow into an alarmingly deformed fetus that seeks out pregnant women and will nourish themselves by draining their victims' blood. That description alone is disgusting enough, but actually coming across one is a whole other realm of repulsiveness. The ugly, purple, half-formed baby with its giant, watery black eyes, misshapen face, and trailing umbilical cord, it's not exactly a precious little bundle of joy. And so it's up to the player to make a quick decision. If they choose to put the thing out of its misery, the botchling will transform into a new, equally horrifying form. If they decide instead to embrace it, the botchling's father is forced to carry the fidgeting, snarling monstrosity home so that it can pass on peacefully and become a guardian spirit. Either way, the many-toothed demon baby is sure to be a memorably gross moment in every player's journey.
Number 5. Granfalloon, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. One of the longest running video game franchises to use horror-inspired imagery, Castlevania has a reputation for being hard rather than scary. After all, pixelated floating heads and skeletons with never-ending ribs to throw at you aren't particularly frightening, more white-knuckle annoying if anything. Whilst the franchise's iconic jump to the PlayStation is recognised more for how it transformed the gameplay, Symphony of the Night does have plenty of interesting sprite work and visual design. Enemies are much more vicious and threatening looking. One boss in particular though stuns most players upon coming across it because of just how bizarre and gross it is. Granfalloon, also known appropriately as Legion, at first looks like a giant brain, but players will soon realise that it is a perfect sphere of compacted human bodies when groups of ghouls fall from the shape, screaming as they disconnect from the orgy of horror and then march towards Alucard. The unrelenting stream of zombies makes this battle feel incredibly claustrophobic and uncomfortable. Battling Dracula and the Grim Reaper are positively cartoony next to this Junji Ito-esque Lovecraftian nightmare. Little more than a weak nucleus at the centre, the player must carve through Granfalloon's outer shell of the damned in order to dispatch this iconic and sinister monster.
Number 4. Mama Gertie, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. Ed McMillan's indie smash hit roguelike Binding of Isaac's story is all about the sin of various kinds, and its imagery matches it tenfold. Considering the game's playable hero is a baby with no clothes and infinite tears to quell his enemies, it's already a weird start before you even broach the subject of what the player finds along the way. Overall, Isaac has a very strong and deliberately gross visual style, so there was no way that it wasn't going to make an appearance on this list. It's really a pick your poison of disgusting here, with enemies that are made of human waste, unconscious fetuses, and several that are just big piles of organs. Whilst Gertie, a distended sack of guts that makes implications to acid reflux, is bad enough, it's the next in line, Mama Gertie, that goes the step beyond. Forget illusions, this boss literally throws up on you. Sometimes it's vomit and sometimes it's blood. What a cheery and perfectly normal game, right? Mama Gertie isn't technically scary, she's just plain revolting, a lumbering, leering mess of guts and a face that continually burps body fluids at you until you've put it to rest.
Number 3. Marguerite Baker, Resident Evil 7. As the core antagonists of Resident Evil 7, the Baker family all adhere to different horror character tropes. It's the dear sweet old mother Marguerite that fulfills the role of basically making the player's stomach turn. While she's seen to have some obsession with bugs, the player is left to wonder where exactly the random insect nests dotted over the flooded old house even came from. That is, until they are forced to face off with Marguerite. Whilst Jack Baker is either completely human looking or a giant eyeball covered blob monster, Marguerite's form twists somewhere between the two, with elongated limbs and an unfortunate surprise between her legs. She scuttles over walls during her boss fight, looking for a quiet space to spawn flies out of her disgusting bulbous nether region. Hardly a picture of fertility and motherhood, Marge's monstrous groans and wails as she pushes bugs out of her is enough to make your skin crawl alone, but it's never something you can totally turn away from, as it's of course her weak point. Resident Evil has had a few gross monsters along the way, but having to blast the bug-infested bajingo of an elderly woman is hard to forget.
Number Number 2. The Great Mighty Pooh, CONKER'S Bad Fur Day. CONKER'S Bad Fur Day is renowned for being the game that let developers Rare really go off the leash. Taking the cutesy mascot squirrel Conker and turning him into a smoking, swearing, lecherous drunkard was a wonderfully wild left turn for the Nintendo 64 system, and the game's humour had that kind of juvenile edginess that you'd expect out of the era, which really doesn't get much more ridiculous than the boss fight against a literal mound of human waste. At the very least, the Great Mighty Pooh stands out from this list by being one of the least psychologically damaging. He's not technically scary, he's not twisted, and he likely won't give you any nightmares. What he almost certainly is, though, is the most foul-smelling. If they ever invite real-life smell-o-vision into video games, this is one title you definitely want to keep away from. You'd think that a mound of literal shit given sentience would be a little more downtrodden about his situation, but fair play to the Pooh for taking it in his stinky stride. This giant turd, perhaps most disgustingly of all, has sweet corn for teeth, which, even for a game with a cartoony visual style, is sure to make your stomach turn.
Number 1. Orphan of Kos, Bloodborne. If it wasn't clear by now, this entry may spell it out. The human body can be truly disgusting. Whilst the miracle of childbirth is something that many are naturally drawn to and cherish, it's also a great thing to twist to upset your audience. Bloodborne has dozens of incredible enemy designs, several of which are disgusting in their own rights, but very few come close to Orphan of Kos. When the player approaches the boss fight, they are treated to a cutscene where Orphan of Kos is essentially birthed, emerging from a fold of organic material, fully grown, with a harrowing, wide-eyed look on its face. If the wet, sticky sound effects of the gaunt body unfolding and casting off pieces isn't enough to upset you, then the boss's breathy crying certainly will. The cutscene that introduces Kos is bad enough, but when the battle begins, the boss gets extra points for not only continuing to be despairingly squishy, but the fact it wields its placenta like a club. Yep, this is next level using my body as a weapon ideology, as Orphan of Kos swings a pink fleshy sack with great abandon. The monster's constant screaming makes it feel like it doesn't want to be here, and to be honest, Kos, most players feel the same way. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought about this video down in the comments below. Which of these video game nasties grossed you out the most? And let us know of any others that we missed. I feel slightly nauseous now after talking about all of these horrible enemies, so I can think of no better person to throw it to bring the mood back up.
Thank you very much for that teeing up there, Si. And yes, I do want to end this list with a bit more positivity, because to be fair, we've been talking about a lot of disgusting things here, so let's end things with a lighter note. And that is that I hope you out there listening to this video are being kind to yourself, both physically and mentally, because you deserve all of the best things in life, alright? Like love, happiness, and success. And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise, alright? Because you are a massive ledge. And I want you to go out there and smash your life goals today. I believe in ya. As always, I've been Jules.
And I've been Si.
And remember, you have been awesome. Never forget that. And we'll speak to you soon. Bye.